All right, so yesterday in class, you completed your grid. You should not have empty space over here. You should have experimented and filled all of your spots. You can see that I've taken off my tape and I have put notes on here as to which of the techniques there are here. Okay, I have rubbed off the salt. I did an experiment here with both salt and with alcohol. So I put alcohol in the lighter sections and salt in the darker sections. It's kind of a cool effect. I've taken my plastic wrap and my wax paper off so I can see what those look like. Like I said, the salt is gone. You kind of have to just rub the salt off. Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at all of my experiments. And like I said, you guys will have 3 more. And I am going to see which ones I like the best. Okay, so these are the ones that I'm going to continue to work with. So you want to work with ones that worked out well for you, obviously. I personally like the wet into wet color mixing a lot. I do also like the stamping. I think that's kind of a cool effect, especially used in certain areas. I also really enjoy the plastic wrap, but I am kind of surprised that I like this one with the alcohol and the salt. So I'm going to kind of think about that as I move to my next phase of planning for this project. We are going to be creating a textured background using one of these texture techniques, but we're also going to be using a color scheme. So we're going to learn a little bit about color schemes here. The first color scheme for us, and I do have color scheme sheets, laminated one for each table. They are on the counter by those supply buckets for the texture techniques. So you could grab one of those for your table as a reminder. I will also post a link to something called the Peloton Color Scheme Designer, and I'll show you that here. But I'm going to go through them first. So the first color scheme that you have to choose from is an analogous color scheme. An analogous color scheme means any 3 colors that sit side by side. They touch each other on the color wheel. So the example that's here on the screen is green, and blue, but it can be any 3 colors. So I could slide that 3 color section all the way around the color wheel to see or create an analogous color scheme. You'll notice for the most part, color schemes include 3 colors. There's one exception to that. So analogous color scheme is one of your options. The next option that you have that you may work with for your project is a complementary color scheme. Now, complementary colors are any 2 colors that are directly across from one another on the color wheel. So there are colors that when we mix them together, make our grays and our browns and our black. And you can use any of those complementary colors. One advantage to using complementary colors particularly is if you want kind of the portrait in your painting to feel realistic skin tone. If you use a pair of complementary colors, we can achieve a brown skin tone with any of the complementary color pairs. So if you want kind of that more realistic skin effect in your work, you're going to want to pick a complementary color pair. And so blue and orange, yellow and purple, red and green would be those options, because like I said, when we mix them together, we do get skin color. Another option for you is a split complementary color scheme. Now, a split complementary color scheme is a lot like a complementary color scheme. It just gives us a little bit more color variation than just the complementary color scheme. So rather than using the yellow and the purple, it uses yellow with the red violet and the blue violet. So it's taking the complementary color, and instead of using the actual complementary color, it's splitting that complement and using the one that is to either side. You won't get true skin tones from this complementary color scheme, but you do get a little bit more color variety. The next color scheme that you can choose is called Triadic. So a triadic color scheme is any 3 colors equally spaced around the color wheel. So you can see it's choose a color, skip 3 colors, choose a color, skip 3 colors. So the highlighted one here on the screen is yellow, orange, red, orange, and blue, violet. It could be any of those all the way around. A really common one is yellow, red, and blue. That's the 3 primary colors, or the 3 secondary colors, which is orange, green, and purple. So you're going to choose one of those. I'm going to show you the color scheme. I'll post a link to this website so that you can kind of see what color schemes look like before you go ahead and paint with them. Oops, let's see, I'm in the wrong spot. Like I said, I'll put a link on here for you so that you can find it easier than me. So it is called the Color Scheme Designer, and there's one on here that you can't use. It's just too simple. It's monochromatic, right? If you think back to the portrait in painting 1, it was a monochromatic portrait. 1 color, black and white. We're not going to use that one. So here I go. I can look at the color schemes. They're all up here at the top. And I can spin this little wheel. And what happens is the colors change over on the side. So, and it has all of them. So I can see what all of them look like. And I can, it's not working great on my iPad. Oh, there we go. I can change, I can shift and drag the color so that this changes. So if you're having a hard time kind of picking color schemes or what kind of even color schemes you like, this is a really amazing resource for you to kind of see, oh, that's what an analogous color scheme with red, violet, red, and red, orange would look like. Oh yeah, I really like that. So I'll post a link to that in Google Classroom so you can see your color schemes and kind of make a plan for them. So here's what you're gonna do. You are flipping to a new sheet in your sketchbook and you are taping off sections just like we did yesterday. I need 12 boxes again, and I am going to experiment and explore with different color schemes and different textures. So this is our color scheme experiments. So remember, our list is analogous, complementary, split complementary, and triadic. And what you're gonna do is decide on a color scheme and what colors you're gonna use. And then I want you to think back to the watercolor textures from yesterday, because this is what's gonna make the background of your project. So if I think back to yesterday, right? I said I liked the stamping, I liked the wet into wet, I kind of like the saran wrap, but I was sort of surprised by this. I'm going to do new texture experiments now using color schemes and going across the page. So each row will be its own color scheme. So I don't have to try all of them. I'm just going to try a few. And maybe I decide right away that I like analogous color schemes best. And I want to try some different ones. That's fine. So you're going to go across the page like this with your color scheme. So I'm going to paint an example for you quick, and then you guys can go ahead and get to work. So you're filling another page with texture experiments, basically. using both a color scheme and a texture. So this first like row for me, I'm going to use a pen. You guys don't have to write on your sketchbook, but I just want to make sure that you understand. This whole first row for me is going to be an analogous combination. So I'm going to go all the way across the whole first row, and I'm going to use yellow and green with some blue. Okay. My next row, I am going to try complementary with orange and blue, because that's like always my favorite color. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do for the third one. And again, those are going to go all the way across. So I'm going to paint that whole row. So this first one, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to start with my yellow. So remember yesterday when we painted wet into wet color mixing, you could decide if you wanted to paint the whole sheet with a color first or with some water first. I kind of like the way it turned out with the water first. And then I'm just going to add in some of my blue. And maybe I do some of that turquoisey blue. Seems a little like light. And maybe I decide I'm putting a little more yellow on the top. This kind of was a heavy duty moment. I really like the plastic wrap effect. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take my little chunk of plastic wrap, so you can totally reuse these. And I'm gonna stick my plastic wrap down in that color combination. And that's gonna be experiment number 1. Experiment number 2, I have an idea that I want to see if it works. And so I'm gonna paint this page yellow first. So I'm gonna go yellow all the way across. And actually I'm going to let this dry because I have an idea based on my experiment yesterday with my salt and my alcohol, but I wanna know if I paint the whole thing yellow first and then add blue and maybe some green over the top, if the yellow will pop through then in those alcohol spaces. So that's what I'm gonna do there. This time I'm going to experiment with some blue first. And then I'm gonna add some yellow. So you can see I'm using those same colors all the way across my sheet. And each one is its own separate experiment using those texture techniques that we used yesterday. Okay. Maybe I want to see, what does this look like? Can I print the bubble wrap into the paint? I don't know. I have no idea actually. Does it look like if I peel it off right now? Kind of a mess. I'm gonna let that sit for a little while because I like the way it looks right here and I know that I like that. So that's an experiment. And then this last one, I think I'm going to, and I don't want to get too dark, right? I need to paint a portrait over the top of this. All of a sudden, as I paint that whole section blue, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, that's a lot of blue. Maybe I need to lighten this up. And what does that look like then? And maybe I do some lift off with my paper towel here and pull out some of this color for a really different texture effect. I didn't do that yesterday and use my paper towel as the only method of texture. So I'm now making up my own texture for my project. I'm going to just dry a little bit of this off. And remember, this one was going to be, I'm going to put some blue over the top. And we'll see. want a little bit of salt and a little bit of alcohol. So I'm gonna take my salt first, I think. I'm gonna sprinkle the salt through the blue. And I'm gonna put the alcohol kind of out here as like highlights. I don't know what happened there. That really made a really strange color. Maybe the end of my paintbrush was dirty. Oh, my water is definitely dirty. Okay, so I'm finding out that the alcohol does not work on yellow paint at all, which is why we experiment, right? I wouldn't have known that unless I experimented. And this gives me an opportunity to play with different texture techniques with the same color combinations in each row. So now I'm on to my next one. I'm gonna do the same thing, but I'm gonna switch up the colors. I'm gonna do a whole row of different experiments using different combinations of orange and blue and different texture techniques as I go, so that I can make an informed decision for my project about what texture technique looks best. So you are going to be creating a whole page of experiments today in your sketchbook using color schemes and textures.